Okay. Hey everybody, John the Other, obviously. And I'm going to start with a statement and then defend it. It's important to not be silent. And of course I mean to not be silent when you are lied to by an authority figure, or when you're told some politically correct nonsense by either, an actual figure of authority like an elected representative, or by some group or person who has arrogated themselves to a position of authority, whether they deserve that authority or not. It's important not to just say nothing. It's important to throw the idea back, to offer some resistance. And I'll tell you why. I have for a long time in Canada been looking at the politically correct empty-headed pablum that gets spooned out from typically right now our federal government. We have this prime minister who is, he's young for a prime minister, and I guess he's good looking, but he has no charisma, and he seems to have no thoughts in his head other of his own. He seems to be intellectually and morally a completely empty vessel, just being filled by the collectivist ideology of the people he is surrounded by. And so he makes these public statements that are just politically correct dreck. You could take a first semester gender studies student and turn the crank and you get the exact same answers. The guy is as empty and worthless as a plate of piss. But it's actually worse than that. Because the things that he says, and I'm going to give an example of something that's typically fed to the public. Diversity is our strength. This is a repeated mantra of the present government. Diversity is our strength. Now, it's obviously false. It's obviously untrue. And it's untrue because what they're talking about is society or the culture. Diversity as a culture is our strength. Well, that's nonsense. What they are talking about is we have people in Canada from all these different cultures, from Islamic cultures and Chinese cultures and South Asian and Russian and Northern European. And all these people from all these different places in the world and all these different political and social philosophies are, many of them, very incompatible with one another. And yet you have all these people living sort of together in the same communities, which means that everybody is disaffected and alienated, and we have a very fractious, divided society. We don't have unification. We don't have everybody pushing towards one goal. We have, basically this ongoing and seemingly escalating internal war in our culture. Well, that doesn't make us strong. It makes us weak. And yet we are told by our supposed leaders, by the elected representatives presently in the seat of power in Canada, diversity is our strength. And we either are expected to repeat this as if it's true, or remain silent when this absurd and quite obscene lie is told to us. And every other piece of banal, politically correct nonsense that comes down the pipe. You just shut up and take it, right? Even if you know it's false, you're supposed to just be quiet. Well, I have for a long time thought that the purpose of the banality and the obvious stupid falsehood of what was told to the public was intended to demoralize the public, to make people depressed and demoralized, and take away their initiative and their sense of integrity to stand up against basically the continuous erosion of civil liberties and the continuous imposition of an increasingly authoritarian government. Well, I read a quote today that somewhat validates this viewpoint. I'm going to read it to you and I'll give you the source of it. There's a book published in 2005 called Our Culture, What's Left of It, written by a psychologist who worked as a prison doctor and did a lot of international charity work, and he was a pretty admirable guy, but also studied communist regimes and communist propaganda. And this is what he says. Political correctness is communist propaganda written small. In my study of communist societies, I came to the conclusion that the purpose of communist propaganda was not to persuade or convince, nor to inform, but to humiliate and therefore the less it corresponded to reality, the better. The people are forced to either remain silent when they are told the most obvious lies, or even worse, they are forced to repeat those lies themselves. They lose once and for all their sense of probity. To assent to obvious lies is to cooperate with evil, and in some small way to become evil oneself. One's standing to resist anything is thus eroded and even destroyed. A society of emasculated liars is then easy to control. I think if you examine political correctness, it has the same effect, and it is intended to. So, political correctness is not just fascism pretending to be manners. It's a weapon to demoralize and degrade and humiliate you, and that's why I think it's important to not just be silent when it continuously hits you over the head. Throw it back with a little bit of spit on top. Anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, have a lovely, lovely day.